All right. Mr. White, you with me? All right, Mr. White, are you there? Turn your mic on.
Okay.
All right. So we are officially live. Hello. This is George Grundy II, your favorite veteran, and we're here on Fli-City Blackout. And we're going to have a conversation with Mr. John White. Mr. John White is a historian of Civil War soldiers. He also wrote a book dealing with the conflict and the soldiers of that time. So, the name of his book is Soldiers of the Cross, the African American Journey from Slavery to the Promised Land. So now I introduce you to Mr. John R. White. How are you doing today, Mr. White?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. I'm ready to go. Do you have the copy of the notes that I sent out?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Your volume is difficult to hear you from here. So if you could some kind of way cut the volume up.
Can you hear me better now? I'm bringing the phone up. Maybe my hand was over the mic. Can you hear me now? Hello? Can anyone hear me now? Yeah, my screen says you're in the show. Everyone can see and hear you. It's just that I can't hear you guys. I don't hear anything.
Yeah, you just put me back on. I was knocked off the show. So I was giving you a call and so I can get linked back up. Can you hear me now, Mr. White?
I'm starting to hear a little bit.
And if you could cut up
But
the volume on both of us so I can hear him better now. I couldn't hear him at first, but he can't hear me. Yeah, even with the volume turned up, I think it's something on your end that you have to adjust the volumes. Okay, cut your volume up, Mr. White.
I can't hear you.
He's saying he can't hear me.
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
He can see me, but he can't hear me.
And like I said, my screen, it says you're in the show. Everyone can see and hear you, but
Cut your
I don't
volume
hear
up.
you guys.
Cut your volume up. Yeah, you're gonna have to call him, tell him cut the volume up. So,
you guys.
oh, that's horrible. That's super horrible. Can you hear me now, Mr. White? Can you hear me now, Mr. White?
No,
His connection is horrible. Can you hear how he sounds over the thing? Sounds like his connection is just
Wait, hold on. Hey, brothers, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Brother White, are you on Wi-Fi connection?
yeah, you hear me. So, because the match have the ones
Yeah, we're gonna have to start this over or something, or read.
You sound like we're doing computer love, doing a remix to computer love right now.
Yeah, not the version I wanted to hear.
So, are you on a Wi-Fi connection, Mr. White?
You gonna write it to him in the text in the chat.
still not. I can see
All right, come on.
the chat.
All right, I'm back. So write everything to him in the chat because he can't hear us audibly. So write it to him in the chat to let him know what's going on.
Mr. White, do you think you can? Do you want to try your phone? See if your phone may work better.
Can hear. I can't.
Ice, get down. Get down. He does.
saying start talking. That's all I got about. It's real and real determined. I just get a question.
Give her the Southern Beat Down. I'm gonna have to give her the Southern Beat Down.
Hey, what's going on, brother John? Yeah,
All right, folks, we just having some technical difficulties. We're gonna get it together. We have Mr. DeJuan Robinson on it, and he's gonna get it right. Mr. White has a very incredible story to tell about Civil War, Black African American Civil War soldiers and their journey and the different and how he got into even understanding and knowing the history. So once we get him online, it's going to be a dynamic conversation, and you're not going to want to miss anything that he has to say. So just, if you would, please just be patient. On the other end of this, Mr. Robinson is going to edit it. And when we have the final cut, all of the extra stuff will be cut out, and you'll be able to see the good pieces. So just stay tuned. Pretend like you got some commercials. This has been sponsored by Burners, but not for real. And Flint, the place that you want to live in order to create a better future. Yeah. Also sponsored by Fli-City Blackout and Mr. DeJuan Robinson, the president of Black Lives Matter Flint. So a lot of sponsorships. We just got to get money to go with those sponsorships. So Verners, we're waiting on you to give us some money. Not give, but to invest into this process, and we'll go from there. So I'm just filibustering right now, trying to fill in until we get to that point. So in today's news, I didn't watch the news today because I didn't want it to be depressed. So I don't have any today's news. Maybe Mr. Robinson has some for you, but he's taking care of technical difficulties. I don't know. This is it's a beautiful day today. The weather has broke, and it's a very beautiful day. I'm hoping that it can be as peaceful as it is beautiful and stay that way. And we have to figure out how to build bridges and have communication between everyone in our community and city. So let's get together and work on making this the environment we all love to be in, you know, from the youngest to the eldest. So I am going to pause for a moment.
Oh, you see me? Okay.
Is that better, guys? I think that might be better.
Live channel 5, and we are on. I can hear everything. Who's got too many phones?
George, I'm still not picking you up.
So cut your phone up. Cut the other phone up. Right.
Here, let me turn this one off.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Here, I'm gonna turn off the phone, Dewan. Okay. Now I'm gonna turn off
We should be good now.
I'm gonna leave my phone connection.
Yeah, we're good now, Mr. White. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, better.
Okay. So let's jump right into it.
Okay.
Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Okay. Well,
You ready?
what
You ready?
I wanted to do
So
was,
what we're gonna do is I want you to introduce yourself. You know, where are you from, and what has your journey been when it comes to you in relation to the city of Flint?
yeah, I'm still not hearing you you real good. But we can go ahead and get started. Do you see this picture here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you guys can see this picture well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That picture is from a was made in the 1880s. And that's the picture of the Battle of Nashville. And that's on the cover of the historical document that I'm putting together. And underneath that picture is a narrative, a slave narrative. And that's not really common because there's not too many slave narratives where the slaves were actually talking, the former slaves were talking about the Civil War. The slave narratives were part of a WPA works program during the Depression.
What
When
does that
black
mean?
colleges realized that they didn't have the history of
What is
all
the
these
WPA work program?
and so they sent out writers all over the South to interview the slaves that were still former slaves that were still alive. And these are called the slave narratives. And it's the only true history of what happened during slavery times, because these were the actual interviews of the actual people, basically our ancestors. And I just want to read one of these, this last one, this one. It says, when I went to the war, I was turning 17. I was in the Battle of Nashville. That's what that picture represents. When we whipped old General Hood, I went to see my mistress on my furlough, and she was glad to see me. She said, "You remember when you were sick and we had to bring you into the house and nurse you? And now, and I told her, yes, ma'am, I remember. And she said, and now you are fighting me? I said, no, ma'am, I am fighting to get free." And his name was Thomas. And that document came out of that came out of the slave narratives. And that picture, even though the battle of Nashville was a very big battle, the black troops only represented a small amount, but they're using that picture to represent the Battle of Nashville. And that's because by the time that happened, which was December 1864, they had become very good at using black troops. They knew how to put black troops on the flank of the Union Army. And they knew that General Hood would shift his army towards the black troops. And then they would overwhelm them with the white troops coming on the other side. That was the constant practice that was done after the Battle of New Market Heights. But anyway, the reason that I started off there is because the nice thing about this, what I'm just going through, is you got the slave narratives, and you also have the battle picture. You have them linked together. You can't, it is very difficult to teach the slave narratives. Very difficult. And a lot of it is because of what African Americans have gone through. And it basically gets down to the thing of identity. Who are we? That's basically what it gets down to. And see, when the Europeans went around the South America, Africa, what they did was they did what was done to them. When the English were in England and they were conquered by the Romans, you have to take over their society. You have to take over their culture. And what they tend to do is they might cheat you a little bit, because they'll say that what your society, where you came from, your culture is bad. Ours is good. And we don't want you to remember it. We don't want you to think about it. One funny thing, when I go to Mexico, I'm in archaeology, and the Mayans in Mexico built these beautiful pyramids. Well, the Mayans were very strong, even though they lost a lot of their capitals, their Mayan temples. But their temples still remain. Well, the Spanish, when they colonized Mexico, they told the Mayans that their ancestors didn't build the pyramids. And the Mayans, when you don't have the education, you're subject to that. And that's basically what happens. That's the way these European colonies work. They go over to people and tell them, forget where you came from. That was inferior stuff. This is it now. But then they also kind of cheat you now. And that's what they were doing. So I just wanted to mention that. And,
So, Mr. White, can you hear me?
yeah.
Can you hear me? I wanted you to go give us a little history about yourself. Where are you from, and how did you get involved in this?
Oh, okay. Okay, that's a good question. Because that's what I was going to go into next. Okay. I lived in Columbus, Ohio. I grew up in Flint, and went to Southwestern High School, and I went to Mott, and my grades weren't all that great, but I wanted to be an engineer. But Mott was a really good place to go. And they helped me build my grades up. And so I transferred to the University of Michigan, where I studied engineering. And I got a degree in aeronautical engineering. And I was there when affirmative action first started. And so it wasn't too many of us blacks before they let us in. You know, my uncle was brilliant. He had gotten a PhD. I mean, he was going to get a PhD at the University of Michigan in mathematics. And it was only like 2 black people besides him trying to do something like that. And his counselor died. So he wasn't able to get his PhD because he just couldn't get that support. Not that many people were supporting him down there. But anyway, that's U of M. I just got to tell you this one story because this was actually in my book. Okay, because affirmative action is a big deal. When I got down there at the University of Michigan Engineering School, they asked me to be in the honor council. Some white boys did. And I said, well, you know, okay, I don't know why you're asking me, but okay. And then we had a meeting. The honor council, what they did was if somebody was cheating, they had to go in front of the honor council and the honor council investigated it. So they wanted me on that council. So anyway, I showed up, and when I got there, a lot of these white guys were just kind of staring at me. And and then the guy that was you know, the president of the honor council, he started speaking to me, and he said, look, they did not come to us correctly about the strike. They didn't talk to us about the strike. And I said, what strike? You know, I grew up in Flint. I said, what strike? And that's how out of there we were. Well, apparently what happened was the whole University of Michigan, they found out that there was a quota on how many black students they let come to the University of Michigan. They would only let a certain number come.
Okay.
And all of the colleges and the white people at the University of Michigan decided to strike because they did not like that policy. Except there was one college that did not strike out of all the colleges in Ann Arbor. And that was the engineering school. It was these guys. And so they wanted to give a formal apology to me. Okay. So I'm like, and I didn't even know about it. Okay.
Wow.
So I said, they said, you know, we really feel bad about that. We wish we had gone along with the strike, and we're happy to see you guys down here, you know. And and I said, yeah, well, okay, I guess I'm speaking for all the black folks. We accept your apology. So I thought that was so cool, you know, because we were the first engineering students, black students that were there. And we had our own office, the Office of Minority Affairs, and it was just great. It was fantastic, and I met really nice. The professors were just great guys, and the engineering students I worked with were just fantastic. I mean, because these guys were just focused on studying. They was just focused on getting their degrees, and they was just a really bunch of cool people. I really loved it there. But anyway, I got my bachelor's there, and so then I ended in Ann Arbor. I mean, Columbus, working for an aircraft company because I was an aeronautical engineer. And while I was there, I went to Ohio State to work on a graduate degree in mechanical engineering. And I bought a little house there. And next door to me was this black guy, and his name was Alvin Pickney. And he used to get dressed up in the Civil War. I would see him with the Civil War stuff on all the time on weekends, and
Okay.
loading stuff into his car. And I asked him, what was this about? And he says, well, he's in the artillery. I says, is it everybody there white? And he said, yeah. He says he's the only black. And I said, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. And he said that there were blacks. They did have black artilleries. It's just that we didn't have a black unit that was free. I said, they had black artillery units? And he said, oh, yeah. Yeah, he said, yeah, they had black artillery, black cavalry, black infantry. They had black everything. And I said, what? I had never heard of nothing like that. And I thought he was nuts. I said, hey, you sound noble. It sounds good, but it's unbelievable. I said, he's touched because I knew nobody in Flint that ever mentioned anything like that. And so after being there about 10 years, I left to come back to Flint. And that's when they filmed the movie Glory. And in the movie Glory, I'll never forget when I saw that black firing line set up against line up against the charging Confederates. And I was just blown away because we had never, the way we were taught was to be ashamed of our ancestors, be ashamed of these black people because they never did anything for their freedom, to earn their own freedom. Like only thing we heard about was Nate Turner. That's all.
Right.
And that's the main one, Nate Turner. They threw it in your face all the time. And that was because Nate Turner killed some innocent people. So that's why they gave us that one. See, they'll give you stuff in history, but you got to be careful what they give you. Even though black folks ended up getting chitlins and making a real good dish out of it. My mother used to love chitlins, and I didn't like them at all. But boy, once I got used to it, man, me and my mom always got to look for special times that we could eat our chitlins, some hot sauce and stuff. But anyway, let's get me off of it. But they what they did was we had never seen it. So that was the first time I had ever seen a black man in uniform shooting at a white man. Okay, it was in that movie Glory, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman. And it was a very powerful movie. And I watched them do that attack on Fort Wagner. And it just kind of blew me away. And but the thing that bothered me the most was that not many people were renting it after the movie was over. And then they started trying to sell the old movies that people didn't want. And all of the Glory movies were for sale and nobody was buying them. And so I said, well, let me buy. I bought one, and I had, when I was in Ohio, my sister-in-law was dating a guy that was an artist. And I said, why don't we take a battle that is of these white guys and make them black to represent the people in that battle? And I said, okay, so only thing I have to do is get a book with these battles in it. And so I went up to Birch Run, and then I saw a book. And I still have a copy of it, even though it's falling apart. There it is. Can you see it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. It's called Great Battles of the Civil War. And then as I thumbed through the book to find battles of white folks, I ran into this picture. You see that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Okay. That's the picture. That's the they're called romantic pictures, romantic drawings of that's the attack of Fort Wagner. That's actually the one set up for glory, right? Okay. And I said, wow. I said, that's unbelievable. And I said, what's that doing in this book? And then I thumbed up a few more pages and I ran into this. You see this one? That's the one I showed before. Right? Okay. Okay. That's the Battle of Nashville. And then I went through the book and I found two more battles. The one, Oleski, a battle of Oleski, and I can't recall the other battle, but I think it was 4 instead of 3. So that bothered me because I said, this guy that was living next to me was right. I'm totally wrong. You know, I mean, if I could have been right a little bit, you know, if it was just Fort Wagner, but right now I see 3. So I said right then, I said, wait, hold it now. We have been lied to. There's some crap going on. I said, it shouldn't be this bad. You shouldn't have this many in here. And I said, well, I'm gonna go to the library and that will straighten the whole thing out. Because I expected to go to the library and find absolutely nothing. And then I could say that this book here is just an anomaly, I guess that's what you call it. It's just something that, you know, what happened was I actually ran into a book written by William Wells Brown, The Negro and the American Rebellion. That kept popping up on the computer. And so I went and got that book and I was just blown away because it started telling all these stories about all the different battles, blacks in the blacks in the Revolutionary War. And it was written in 1866, 1 year after the Civil War had ended, 1866. And so, and it is said in the introduction that this book was the writer, William Wells Brown, was such a great writer. You couldn't ask for somebody better. You couldn't ask for a better book. But then if you looked in the sleeve of it, you saw only 7 people checked it out in the last 7 years. And right now I say, well, it'd be lucky to have 7. You know, I said, how could that be? How could only 7 people check it out in the whole doggone city? I said, this thing is getting crazier and crazier. And so I said, well, let me buy the book. And so I went to the bookstore and they said, yeah, that book costs $5. It was some crazy price. So I said, boy, that's awful cheap. They said, yeah, the last person bought it was 15 years ago or something like that.
Wow.
I said, wow. And Then I had the other shock of my life. And the
What
other
was that?
shock of my life was as I was browsing the black books, I ran into this book called Bullwhip Days, The Slaves Remember. And by then, I had learned a lot about Black Civil War soldiers and the stuff that they had done. But I was taught, like everybody in Flint at that time, to not really respect slaves. I mean, America teaches that. You do not respect them. You do not have respect for them. I mean, that's what you're taught, okay? And so I didn't. I said, I'm not going to, this is crazy. But I opened it up and I said, well, I'll just look in here because my father really loved his ancestors. And that was a lot of it. That's what gave me made me want to have a second look. He really loved them. And we would go visit the graves of his grandparents and his great-grandparents. And he knew former slaves. And he really respected them. And that respect kind of rubbed off on me. So I said, okay. I read the first one. The first one was, I believe, the one that stuck with me the most that I read in that bookstore was Mary Reynolds. And that was such a... see, what was happening to me, I was running into the most awesome stuff in the world. And it was casually. And I didn't realize how powerful this stuff was. And it just so happens that Mary Reynolds was 100 years old in the 1930s when she gave her narrative. And we had watched movies like Miss Jane Pittman, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. Well, that's a slave narrative. We didn't know that. We didn't know that they had built that novel off of the slave narratives, and they may have built it off of the real person, which was Mary Reynolds, and taken a lot of the heavy stuff out of it. But anyway, the first story, she talked about her dad. Her dad was from Chicago, and she was in the Delta in Mississippi or Texas or something. He was way down there. And he came down there to tune pianos. And I said, what made that man leave Chicago to go down there looking for a job? And he was a free black. And he got down there and he met Mary's mother and he loved her and he wanted to marry her. And but Kilpatrick, her owner, would not sell her. And so he lived there. She said he spent his whole life being a free man, even though his wife was still a slave until the end of slavery. That was her first 1 or 2 paragraphs. And I said, man, that is a heavy story.
Mr. White, once you finish that part of the story, can you tell us about William Wells Brown?
Of who?
Once you finish that story, can you tell us a little bit about William Wells Brown?
William Wells Brown?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. William Wells Brown, what made his stuff so powerful, he was as powerful as Frederick Douglass, except kind of more powerful, because he was writing the history. And he was writing the history from a black person's perspective because he was a slave. He knew what it was like to be a slave. He was one. Okay, he knew what it was like to escape to freedom. He wrote the first black novels. He wrote a book called Clotel, the President's Daughter. Thomas Jefferson apparently had a black daughter, and he wrote that, but he had to write it in England. That's what Frederick Douglass was doing. He had to escape to England in order to do that stuff. You couldn't do the stuff in the United States. The slave catchers would come get you.
So
And
William Wells Brown moved to England.
Yeah, yeah, to do that book. Yeah.
Okay. So do you have the story on how he gained his freedom?
I'm not sure. I would say that I'm not sure. I did, but you know, one thing that you can always do, everything that I say, you can Google it. Every single thing I say. And that's the most wonderful thing about the way things are right now. All you got to do is Google William Wells Brown, and it'll give you the whole history of him. Wikipedia they did a great job with William Wells Brown. Except, here's the problem. You can't just, you have to keep your wits about you, because like I said, he wrote the first Civil War book, Blacks in the Civil War. He wrote the first one, almost the last one too, because not many people did it. And they burned his warehouse down. But when you look in Wikipedia, they barely mention the book. They'll tell you about the other stuff he did, the other books, but for some reason they don't want to talk about that. And so, and I just learned, I can't fight them on everything like that. The only thing you can do is say, look, that book is available. The information is available. Somebody needs to contact Wikipedia and tell them to talk more about the book.
Okay. Now you spoke about how you got introduced to reenactment. Tell us about your first reenactment and how you actually became a person that involved yourself directly in reenactment.
That started with Juneteenth. I started an organization called the Gospel Army Black History Group. That name, the Gospel Army, comes from there was a guy named General Hunter, who was an abolitionist general, and he was a friend of Abraham Lincoln, and so he made it up pretty far in rank, and he became commander of the South. And when he was commander of the South, he established headquarters at Hilton Head. Hilton Head, South Carolina. And while he was there, he started the first regiment, the first African-American regiment. These guys were former slaves. And they were very, very religious. Let's see. Yeah, because let's see, I want to go over that. Okay, he wrote General Hunter established the first South Carolina volunteers. They were all former slaves. He had gotten them off plantations in the area, and it was some kind of deal Lincoln had made with some of these borderline states in some of these areas, and that was one of them, that they could keep their slaves. But here Hunter was trying to build a black regiment, and these guys called themselves a gospel army, because they were very religious.
You say the Gospel Army?
Yeah, that's what they called themselves. They were religious. They were religious fanatics. Let me read what Lincoln, he did that in May of 62. And so later, Abraham Lincoln made him shut them down because the white farmers were starting to complain in South Carolina. So he shot.
What were they complaining about?
They made hunters shut them down.
So what were they complaining about? What were the white farmers complaining
that
about?
they didn't want their black guys being in the Union Army.
So they were complaining about people fighting for their freedom.
Right. They didn't think that was a good idea. But anyway, then General Butler comes along. General Butler at that same time is the guy that said, because slaves were running away from these plantations to the Union lines. And so the planters wanted them back. And that was due to the, I forgot that law that said you had to bring the slaves back. Fugitive slave law.
Fugitive slave law.
But anyway, Butler said, no, they are contraband. And we're going to keep them. And as long as you, the South is we're having this conflict, we're not going to return the slaves because we think they're military contraband. So he was the one that did that. Lincoln sent him to Butler to Louisiana. And in Louisiana, at New Orleans, they had free blacks. Now, these blacks weren't American blacks. They were like French blacks. They were like Spanish blacks. They were colored. They called them people of color. They were colored because their slavery was different than American slavery. You could actually buy your way out of their slavery. And so some of these guys in New Orleans owned slaves. Well, what they had actually done when the war started, they were Confederates. They were black Confederates.
So you're saying that there were people of color, black people,
yeah,
that
they were called foreigners. So that's where that term comes from. They were, the reason that they're people of color is that they have a lot of mixed blood because they were more liberal down there in New Orleans. And so, but anyway, they were called the Louisiana Native Guard. And then Butler was short of men. And so he came, what actually happened was they told the Confederates said, no, you guys cannot join us. And that was because cats down in Mississippi, the eastern South, was far more radical than those guys were. They were two different worlds. They were like, no, we don't like black people. No, we are really different. Okay. So we don't want no black folks in New Orleans in our Confederate army. And so Butler went to the black guys and said, look, we would like to have you guys in the Union Army. And he said, but really all of our officers think that you guys won't fight. And the leader of them said, pardon me, General, but the only thing that's going to run from us, is the white blood that's in us. And he says, because we got over this country fighting in wars in Africa. And so he said, okay, then we'll start you off. So he started the first black regiment to enter the Union Army, the Louisiana Native Guard. That was in August. And then Lincoln met with Butler. And see, Lincoln's plan was to take all the black people and send them back to Africa. That was the recolonization plan. Okay. And he was asking Butler to figure it out. See, Butler
Really,
was
we don't hear a lot about that in the history books.
Oh no. Butler was the most hated man in the world. That was because Butler took over John Brown's job of arming the Negroes. Okay, because he told Lincoln, he says, look, they love this country. The recolonization won't work. And he says, then they switched to the idea of arming the Negroes. And Butler said, yeah, I think it can be done. John Brown was going to, just arm them and pick them up as he went further south. Butler said, I think that's a pretty good idea. And so Lincoln said, yeah, well, he says, that sounds like a new idea. And he says, no, it's not new. He says, the black folks were fighting in Africa. So that's how I got started. And so in August of 62, Butler starts the first black regiment. In September of 62, one month later, President Lincoln tells people about the Emancipation Proclamation. And in the Emancipation Proclamation, see, all we hear about the emancipation, this is how screwy stuff is. All we hear is that, yeah, Lincoln freed the slaves. Emancipation Proclamation. No, it's more deeper than that. It's deeper than that. It not only did it freed the slaves in areas that the Union occupied and controlled. That's all. Only those. And so, in other words, if they were in Mississippi, the Union had to go down there and control Mississippi. If they were in Texas, now that's a big one, because that's where you get into Juneteenth. They're not free until the Union controls Texas. Well, the Union didn't control Texas until Juneteenth of 1865. And so they never did emancipate, those guys there. So the Juneteenth model is kind of, it's got the Southern perspective flair in it because they like that. And I think the government liked that and Congress liked that because it did not have the Black Civil War soldiers in it. See?
Wow.
So
you're saying that you believe that Juneteenth is favorable to the majority or the certain people because it does not show the rebellion of blacks in
exactly. It supports the status quo. And that's why they would, they giving a little piece at a time because they still are with this idea that Lincoln freed the slaves. Okay. So, but anyway.
So question. When it comes
in 1863 is when January 1st, Emancipation Proclamation took control. And that's when the black regiments could start joining what they call the United States Colored Troops. Okay. And so, because they don't mention that the Emancipation Proclamation armed the Negroes. Okay. And they hate that word, arm the Negroes. Because that is a game changer. Okay. That is a total game changer. Okay.
Mr. White, question.
Yeah.
When it comes to the term or the size or the amount of blacks that were uh, that were involved in the war, how many blacks were actually soldiers? How many soldiers were in the Civil War that's on record?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Let's
Because are we
see.
talking about 100, 500, 1,000?
Oh no. Here, let me okay, that's way over on page 24. Um, the United States colored troops. Okay, you had 6 regiments of cavalry, 1 regiment of light artillery, 1 independent heavy artillery, 13 heavy artillery regiments. And then you had, let's see, down here at the bottom, 135 infantry. So most of them were infantry. And the next biggest one, 13 heavy artillery, 6 regiments of cavalry. Okay. At one time, you had about 130,000.
You said 130,000
Yeah.
human beings that were black in the Civil
Black
War.
soldiers. Those were black soldiers.
So 130,000 black soldiers in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Over 100,000 black people fought in the Civil War.
Right.
So
right.
that means that the 40 million people that are in this country that are black have relatives that they are connected to that were in the Civil War that they don't know.
It's probably all over the place.
So we have a huge history in the fight.
Yeah, it was 130,000. And see, the thing about it is that history goes to the people that are spending the money. And so the Confederates in the South were big history buffs because they liked waving their flag and they liked being they liked telling their story, and they buy the books. And so you have to be, the problem is that you have to deal with that when you go down south. If you want to write a book, you say, yeah, I love me some Confederates. If you want to sell books, okay, you gotta tell them what they want to hear. Like I remember Hitler on Roots, and he used to say, yeah, I got to play with the white folks want to play, because they gonna dance to that music. You have to, and that's basically what happened. And black folks were at a real disadvantage in the South. For one reason, they could not promote their history because people didn't like it. If you were a teacher, you could quietly get fired, so you couldn't promote it.
So, Mr. White, question. During slavery, wasn't it illegal to learn how to read and write?
Yeah. They had to do that. Like I was saying earlier, that the Aztecs and the Mayans in South Mexico were taught that they didn't make pyramids, that they didn't make their pyramids. That's just the way these colonial guys operated. They basically did a lot of lying. And the one thing that's very important, though, is that when you don't study history and don't be truthful and honest history, you can make the same mistake over and over and over again. Like people will say Saddam Hussein has got weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, see, they do that all the time. They do it all the time. And if you don't question them, and make them pay for it, they'll do it again. Because it's easy to lie, and that's what they do. It's easy to take advantage of them. I got a story. This is kind of an ugly story. It's kind of an ugly, crazy story. Okay, but it's a story my father told me, and it's something that could kind of shine some light on it. That is just a normal thing. My father and those guys down there at that time used to play a lot of baseball, and they used to travel, and they talked about the black guys from Louisiana talking about they couldn't read and write, and so they said that the guys in Arkansas could. He was probably lying. He's probably just a total lie, He said, the brothers in Arkansas could, they had no trouble reading right. So he said when they'd go over there and play baseball with them, and they'd hit the ball, and it may hit the bag or something like that, and there's an argument. They said they would just bring out the rule book and say it says right here in the rule book that what we did is okay. And then they said, oh, okay, because they couldn't read. Okay, and so it was just a joke my father told, but it was probably they take advantage of people.
So pretty much what I'm understanding is that a lot of our ism schisms understanding is all based on programming of propaganda. They make you believe that you're ignorant, uneducated, and not unified, and so it causes you to believe that you don't count, you don't matter, and you don't have a voice or the power to fight back.
Right. And the thing is that it's a thing that African Americans have to fix themselves, because that's, which I have no problem with. And so it has to be a thing where we figure it out ourselves, fix it ourselves. And so, because they can't fix that. But the thing about it is what happens if you look at African American history is that the accomplishments that we make end up freeing the rest of the world. The changes that we make are somehow they spill over to the rest of the world. They become the gold standard. So,
Mr. White, we've been on here for over an hour, about an hour and 9 minutes. And this conversation, we both know that it's going to be 3 additional conversations that we have so you can get out the rest of the information. So on the next conversation, we're going to be talking about your relationship with General Colin Powell and how you guys were pen pals and such, and more so on your book, and also the experiences you had while you were being a reenactor for the Civil War reenactment.
Okay.
And much more, but with that, those are some of the things people can look forward to. Is there anything else you want people to prepare and look forward to?
Yeah. I want to leave you with this letter. William Wells Brown, what made him so fantastic was that he came up with documents that I don't know where he got them from. Like I was telling you about General Hunter establishing the first Black regiment. And but this is a letter that he wrote to the governor of Massachusetts. And I want to just read this, what's at the end of this letter. It says, "These regiments are hardy, generous, temperate, patient, strictly obedient, possessing great natural aptitude of arms and deeply imbued with that religious sentiment, call it fanaticism, such as what made the soldiers of Cromwell invincible. They believe that now is the time appointed by God for their deliverance. And under the heroic incitement of this faith, I believe them capable of showing a courage, a persistence of purpose, which must in the end extort both victory and admiration.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And
Wow.
so what we have to do is we have to answer that question. Who are these religious fanatics? And see, that's the big one. Who are these religious fanatics? Were they invincible? Okay. Were they as good as the army of Cromwell?
Okay.
So that is what we need to do later. But to do that, we have to go back to slavery. We have to go back to the slave narratives, because that's where that came from.
And you will be letting us know about that. And what I look forward to you being a part of this year's Juneteenth celebration and commemoration. That's going to be very exciting to see you there and presenting some of this information there too. This coming Juneteenth.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that. As you can see, I wanted to get to page 12. We only got to page 3.
Okay, well, that's why we're having 3 more conversations.
Yeah, okay, but we did because it is the history of 40 million people. 40 million.
Yes, sir.
And it's not like they know it. They don't. And
yes, sir.
So they want to believe that it's just a 15-20 minute job. Because that's what they've been taught. They've been taught, oh yeah, that you do that 10-15 minutes. No, you can't. Okay, you can't. Okay, their history, and I'm gonna tell you something else. Their history in 500 years will still be around, and people will know it. While
yes, sir.
a lot of other histories are going to be gone. That one is going. Believe me, this one is going nowhere. Now we may not know it, but later generations will. And so it's important to be able to lay it down and preserve it so that they can. The brainwashing, that's part of the story. Maybe the suffering that comes from the brainwashing. Maybe that's part of the story. But what's got to be written is people want to know, but what did you do next? What did you do? What did you do to change it? It ain't going to be what did somebody do for us to change it or who saved us. You know, they want to know, what did you do? How did you get out of it?
Right.
How did you change that?
And you're going to go into that, and you're going to explore that a lot more. And
Right.
Mr. White, I really do appreciate you joining us today on Fli-City Blackout, hosted by me, George Grundy II, your favorite veteran. And appreciate all of the nuggets of information and knowledge that you've gone over. And I can't wait till next Tuesday where we speak about more of it.
Okay, great. Fantastic. It was great. It was a lot of fun. Hey,
thank you.
Hey, Dad.
Okay.
All right. So that's going to be it for us tonight, Mr. White. I appreciate you, and I look forward to speaking to you next Tuesday at 5. And I'm sure we'll be having more conversations so we can better prepare for that conversation. And you have a wonderful night and weekend.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Yes, sir. And just hit the leave button on the bottom right. Yes, sir.